Deep beneath the Earth's crust, in the fortified subterranean labyrinth of Ethelgard Biotic's most classified facility, the air was perpetually chilled to a sterile precision, carrying faint echoes of long-abandoned machinery and the subtle hum of ventilation systems struggling against the weight of secrecy. The complex sprawled like a buried metropolis, its levels descending into oblivion, each one guarded by layers of reinforced concrete and biometric locks that only the highest clearances could breach. Commander Elias Graves, a hardened veteran in his mid-40s, bore the scars of countless corporate operations, his face a map of sharp angles, deep-set eyes shadowed by years of unwavering loyalty to Ethelgard's bottom line, and a jaw clenched perpetually against the moral ambiguities of his trade. He led Unit Echo, a specialized cleanup crew assembled for missions where deniability was paramount. Flanking Graves were for operatives, each chosen for their skills and expendability. Miller, the youngest at 28, served as the tech specialist and field medic. His slender frame and wide, anxious eyes hinted at a humanity that hadn't yet been fully eroded by the job, often manifesting in hesitant pauses during briefings or quiet moments of doubt. Then there were the grunts, Jocks, a burly ex-mercenary with a perpetual smirk and a penchant for dark humor. His rifle always slung casually, as if violence were just another pastime. And Cole, quieter and more methodical, a former security contractor whose steady hands and unflinching aim made him reliable though his silence often masked a simmering resentment toward the corporate overlords who signed their paychecks. The team descended via a massive industrial elevator, a rumbling metallic beast that served as their gateway to the abyss. It plummeted for what felt like an eternity, the cables groaning under the strain, red emergency lights pulsing intermittently like the heartbeat of a dying machine. The floors below were slick with condensation, or perhaps something more viscous, trails of dark fluid that caught the light in ominous glints. "Gear check," Graves barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade, echoing off the reinforced walls. Rifles were racked with sharp clicks, tactical visors powered up with soft hums, displaying HUD overlays of vitals and schematics. And Miller's datapad illuminated his face in pale blue as he scrolled through the facility's blueprints. Their objective was clear and merciless: infiltrate the compromised sector for locate and extract. Dr. Alara Vancer, brilliant virologist, deemed a high-value asset due to her work on experimental bioenhancement sand exfiltrate before the facility's central AI enacted its purge protocol, flooding the levels with superheated plasma to erase all traces of the breach. The elevator shuddered to a halt, and the doors hissed open with a pneumatic sigh, releasing a wave of colder, fouler air that carried the faint metallic temps of blood and chemicals. The team stepped into a sprawling network of dimly lit corridors, emergency strips along the walls casting a sickly red glow that elongated their shadows into grotesque forms. Ahead loomed the primary security checkpoint, its once impenetrable reinforced glass now shattered outward in a spray of jagged fragments, as if an immense force had erupted from the guard station within. Jocks dropped to one knee, his gloved hand sifting through the debris until he unearthed a severed human hand. Pale and bloodless, fingers still rigidly curled around a laminated keycard slick with crimson. "Jesus, what the hell did this pay?" he muttered under his breath, his usual bravado cracking for a moment. Graves shot him a withering glare, silencing any further commentary. Overhead, the facility's AI voice resonated through hidden speakers, .com, and detached. Containment breach detected in multiple sectors. Unauthorized biological entities roaming. Recommend immediate evacuation. Time was already their enemy, ticking down inexorably, pushing deeper into the heart of the facility. The team navigated winding hallways lined with observation windows into abandoned labs, where equipment lay toppled and papers scattered like fallen leaves in a storm. The air grew thicker, heavy with the cryogenic haze of spilled dry ice from ruptured cooling systems and the unmistakable stench of fresh slaughter. Graves' rifle-mounted flashlights swept the darkness, cutting beams through the fog to reveal the central laboratory, a vast chamber of white-tiled sterility now desecrated by chaos. Overturned workstations, shattered vials leaking iridescent fluids, and walls smeared with arterial sprays told a story of panic and unimaginable violence. In the far corner, behind the transparent walls of a sealed clean room, they spotted Dr. Alara Vance. She was huddled beneath a reinforced desk, her lab coat torn and stained, a sleek silver briefcase handcuffed securely to her left wrist. Her face was gaunt from days of isolation, eyes wide with a mix of exhaustion, raw terror, and something sharper defiance, perhaps. She met their gazes through the glass, shaking her head vigorously and pressing a hastily scrawled note against the window in bold marker. "Do want breathe, airborne. Dr. Vance, this is Extraction Team Echo. Open the door now," Graves commanded over the external intercom, his voice steady and authoritative, leaving no room for negotiation. But Vance backed further into the shadows, mouthing silent pleas and gesturing wildly at the vents overhead. Miller shifted uncomfortably, his moral instincts warring with protocol. "Sir, look at her, she's absolutely terrified. If there's an airborne pathogen and the seal's been compromised even slightly..." His words trailed off under Graves' piercing stare. "We're on a ticking clock, Miller. The purge initiates in 30 minutes. Crack the lock." Reluctantly, Miller approached the keypad, his fingers dancing across the interface as he bypassed security protocols with a series of overrides pulled from Ethelgard's backdoor codes. The hydraulics engaged with a prolonged whine, and the heavy door slid open, releasing a faint hiss of pressurized air. Vance scrambled backward on the floor, her voice a harsh whisper laced with fury. "You absolute idiots. The noise from that door, you've just rung the dinner bell." Jocks moved forward instinctively to secure her, grabbing her arm to pull her up, but a series of wet, guttural clicking sounds reverberated from the overhead ventilation ducts, growing louder and more insistent. The room plunged into a frozen silence, every member of the team raising their weapons toward the ceiling. What was Thar Jocks started, but his words were cut off as the vent grate directly above him exploded downward in a shower of metal screws and dust. A nightmarish creature crashed onto his shoulders, a skinless humanoid abomination, its raw musculature glistening with oozing yellow fluid, exposed veins pulsing erratically. It sank elongated claws into his neck with savage precision, tearing through flesh in a spray of arterial blood. "Contact, 12 high." Graves roared, his shotgun thundering as he unleashed the first barrage. Muzzle flashes illuminated the room in staccato bursts, revealing a horde of similar horrors pouring from the vents and ceiling panels hollowed, as the classified files dubbed them. Former facility staff mutated by the escaped pathogen into fast, hyperaggressive monstrosities. Their bodies were armored with protruding exoskeletal bone growths like jagged spikes, allowing them to scuttle across surfaces with spider-like agility, limbs bending at unnatural angles. "Aim for the legs. Center mass is useless, they don't register pain there." Vance screamed over the din, scrambling for cover behind an overturned console. Miller's submachine gun chattered in controlled bursts, dropping one creature mid-leap as its joints shattered. Graves charged forward, shoulder-checking a lunging hollow and pumping a shotgun slug into its exposed torso at point-blank range, the impact splattering acidic viscera across the walls and his visor. Cole, positioned near the doorway, fired disciplined shots into the encroaching shadows, his rifle barking steadily. But from the darkness of the adjacent server room, a whip-like appendage, a prehensile tongue lined with barbs slashed out, coiling around his ankle with bone-crushing force. He was yanked off his feet and dragged screaming into the gloom, his gunfire erratic as he vanished. The screams peaked in agony before terminating in a wet, crunching finality. Cole's gone. Fall back to the extraction point elevator now. Graves bellowed, covering their retreat with suppressive fire. Miller hauled Vance to her feet, slinging her arm over his shoulder as they navigated the blood-slicked floor, the briefcase banging against his leg. Behind them, the relentless slap of wet, pursuing footsteps echoed like an approaching tidal wave, the hollows chittering in eerie unison. The AI's voice boomed overhead once more. Biohazard escalation confirmed. Sector 4 lockdown initiated. Purge protocol activation in Team Nennis 20 minutes. Massive blast doors began descending at the end of the corridor, their hydraulic rams groaning. The survivors dove beneath the narrowing gap, just as it sealed with a thunderous clang, severing a pursuing hollow's arm in the process. Trapped on the wrong side, the remnants of Unit Echo Graves, Miller, and Vance regrouped in a secondary maintenance junction bathed in flickering red emergency lighting. Panting heavily, they checked ammunition and wounds while the AI updated relentlessly. Contamination levels critical. Full sterilization protocol initiates in 15 minutes. All personnel advised to evacuate immediately. The entire facility would soon be engulfed in cleansing flames, vents spewing incineration gases that would reduce everything organic to ash. Vance, steadying her breath against a wall, pointed down a side passage with urgency. Forget the elevator, it's sealed off now. There's a cargo train in the testing wing, automated line to the surface freight dock. It's our only remaining shot out of here. With no alternatives, they pressed onward, moving cautiously through dimly lit annexes lined with massive containment tanks. These cylindrical vats held the facility's failed experiments, grotesque amalgamations of human and synthetic biology suspended in preservative fluid. Limbs malformed, faces twisted in perpetual agony. Some twitched faintly, as if sensing the intruder's presence. One tank was entirely shattered, its glass strewn across the floor. The occupant long since escaped into the corridors. As they advanced, Miller's sharp eyes noticed a thin plume of cold vapor leaking from a hairline crack in Vance's briefcase. The gas dissipated quickly, but it carried a faint, acrid scent that made his skin crawl. "Doctor, what the hell is really in that case?" he demanded, his voice low but edged with suspicion. Vance's expression hardened, her previous terror giving way to a calculated resolve. "You think I was just some helpless researcher waiting for rescue? I didn't steal the cure alone, I took the source pathogen too. The original strain, weaponized and pure. I'm not a victim here. I'm defecting on my terms, selling it to the highest bidder of." The confession landed like a grenade, shattering any illusions of heroism. Graves' eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Time for recriminations later, if they survived. Debate was interrupted abruptly in a narrow, shadow-choked corridor when Jocks, who had been bringing up the rear, let out a sharp yelp and vanished into a side alcove. A wall-crawling abomination sleeker, and more elongated than the hollows, with an exposed brain and a serpentine tongue, had ambushed him, pinning him against the ceiling. Infection spread visibly through his veins as he convulsed, flesh bubbling. Graves raised his sidearm without hesitation and put a single round through Jocks's skull. "No loose ends. Can't risk him turning," he stated flatly, his tone underscoring the cold, brutal efficiency that defined Ethelgard's operatives. Finally, they burst into the vast cargo bay, a cavernous space of industrial rails and loading platforms where the automated freight train waited, its engines idling with a low rumble, a gleaming beacon of potential salvation amid the encroaching doom. But salvation was guarded. Blocking the track stood Subject Zero, the apex failure of the program. Towering at nearly 10 feet, it was a colossal monstrosity of hypertrophied muscle bulging unnaturally, exposed organs throbbing beneath translucent skin, and a grafted metal visor fused to its skull, concealing whatever remnants of humanity lingered in its eyes. It lumbered forward with earth-shaking steps, emitting low, rumbling growls interspersed with mechanical whines from its cybernetic implants. Graves and Miller opened fire immediately, rifles chattering in unison, but bullets ricocheted harmlessly off its reinforced hide like pebbles against armor plating. "It's not going down. The plating's too thick," Miller shouted, dodging a sweeping arm that cratered the concrete floor. Vance, adrenaline sharpening her mind, dashed to a nearby control panel and hacked the environmental systems. triggering emergency vents. A torrent of supercooled liquid nitrogen blasted forth, engulfing the creature's right arm in a freezing cascade that crystallized the limb solid in seconds. Graves capitalized instantly, shouldering his grenade launcher and firing a high-explosive round into the frozen appendage. It shattered in a spectacular explosion of crystalline shards and frozen gore, severing the arm at the elbow. Enraged, Subject Zero let out a horrifying roar, a blend of chittering insectal clicks and weeping human sobs and charged, slamming Miller against a support pillar with its remaining fist. Bones cracked audibly as Miller slumped, blood trickling from his mouth. With a grim, resolute nod to Graves, he triggered the C4 charges strapped to his tactical vest. "Go get her out," he yelled through gritted teeth. The detonation was cataclysmic, a fireball engulfing Subject Zero and collapsing part of the bay in flames and flying debris. Graves and Vance, ears ringing and bodies battered, staggered onto the train's open cargo car just as its automated departure sequence engaged, lurching forward into the ascending tunnel toward the surface. As the train climbed, rumbling through darkened shafts, the AI's final broadcast echoed faintly behind them. Sterilization protocol complete. Facility purged. A fleeting wave of relief washed over the survivors, the roar of the engine drowning out the distant sounds of collapse. They emerged at last onto a remote surface platform under a starless night sky, floodlights piercing the darkness where an Ethelgard Rapid Response extraction team awaited. Armored figures with rifles trained unwaveringly. The team's leader, a stern-faced operative in executive security garb, stepped forward, his eyes devoid of empathy. Without preamble or warning, he raised his pistol and shot Dr. Vance point blank in the forehead, her body crumpling lifelessly to the platform as blood pooled beneath her. He knelt swiftly, unlocking the briefcase from her wrist and securing it. Asset recovered. "No witnesses, Commander," he intoned coldly, turning his gaze to Graves. Wounded, bloodied, but unbroken in spirit, Graves locked eyes with the man who represented everything he had served. In that moment, the weight of countless betrayals crystallized. His hand, hidden from view, slipped to the fragmentation grenade on his belt, fingers deftly pulling the pin free. A defiant smirk ghosted across his lips as the device clattered to the ground. The explosion erupted in a blinding flash and thunderous roar, consuming the platform in fire and shrapnel, a final futile act of rebellion against the machine. In the distant boardrooms of Ethelgard Biotics, stock prices on glowing screens ticked upward fractionally, analysts attributing the minor surge to successful containment of operational risks. The corporation's vast engine ground onward, indifferent to the ashes of lives it had expended in the depths below.
Thanks for watching. If there is anything you would like to see, leave it in the comments. I'll see you next time. I can't wait.